This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Marie Birtel, and we're going to talk about your path to understanding the dependency within toxic family systems, and we'll get deep into your story. But I want to welcome you to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight or today?
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be the guest here tonight.
You're an author, and we're going to talk about recognizing narcissistic abuse. That's
Yeah.
one of the topics. And but one of the things we always ask any guest before they get deeper into your story is what motivates you and why do you do what you do?
Oh my God, this is a deep question. I think what motivates me the most is people. In general, I was always very interested in people, and this was the reason why I went into this path. So yes, it motivates me, like joy of life.
That's important because I think
Mm.
just a lot of times we talk to people and we get into your background. It's like your initial background was as a journalist and a university lecturer. So what made you
Yes.
want to write the book?
So I have to say, I started to write when I was very young. So I always had a lot of diaries. I started, I think, like, you remember the diaries, like the books where you also have like a little key you need, to open it. And I grew
Oh
up
yeah,
with two brothers. So I really had to, lock them,
like
because
okay.
otherwise all my secrets and crushes would, they would know it. And so I started to write, and for me, writing was always a kind of, I would call it now like kind of therapy, because with this I could, put things into words, and I started to write this book when I was 16 years old. So a lot of chapters in this book are very old now.
Wow. So it's been a long process. You've been keeping like a journal over time, and then you use that as
Yes,
your source material to finally decide to put it together into a book.
yes, exactly. Mm.
So you're bridging like
Mm.
the world between like your work as a journalist and as a psychological counselor. So like in terms of that work, maybe you're going to tell your story about how you came into that path.
Yes. So, yes, I studied journalism, and in 2007, I wanted to have a job in, like a publishing house or at magazines. And during that time, there was no social media. So I have to say, like, I'm going to be 40 next year. So I'm not that old, but sounds always old. Like, there was no Instagram, no TikTok, no
Yeah.
Facebook. So not even online magazines. So it was like still the printing magazines, and there were no jobs because in Germany the crisis was high. So publishing houses would go bank, how you say, like, no money, no
Bankrupt.
jobs,
Yeah. Just go
nothing.
out of business. Yeah.
So I started to work as a PR agent for luxury brands, because what I can do is like talk and write. So I used this as a, other kind or way to find the
Yeah.
job, and I liked it. Yeah. So I started to work at a PR agency. And I don't know if you have read or seen the movie The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was exactly this, just talking in German.
Yeah.
And I know,
Like,
like, two of my friends are watching me now, and I'm still friends with them since 25 years. We know each other from this agency path. So yeah, it was like a very interesting time. And then I got to know a lot of people, and started to also write, like, about other things. And very soon I got to know my nowadays husband. We just got married, and he brought me into the psychological field, because what he did is, he's using the archetype model that is from Siggy Jung, and I don't know if you have heard about it. And we were just talking about the people that you invite for as guests in your podcasts.
mhm.
So the archetype model is about archetypes, like the sense of what you really want to do in life. It's very complicated to talk like in a few minutes, and this brought me like, okay, I want to be a creator, but I also want to be a healer, like help people.
Yeah.
And I could do this with writing. So I studied again. Yes. And the book I wrote 2 years ago, I published it in March. And this was born through a deep crisis.
So you started to look at narcissistic abuse. Is that the like the deepest pattern that you're focusing on, or you look at all different types of abuse
Uh,
archetypes?
the focus is on covert narcissistic abuse,
Hmm.
because in general, there's a lot going on about narcissistic abuse, about narcissists. It came to be a very colloquial word to use for a lot of people. Like if somebody's not into you, oh, he's a narcissist, So
Yeah.
that's very dangerous. Like, okay, and people can be mean, but it doesn't mean that they are pathological ill.
Yeah.
So this is, I'm not really, as long as the disease, because it's a disease, it's a mental disease, it's a mental disorder, as long as it's not diagnosed, you can't call somebody a narcissist. But
Hmm.
I got into it because I'm German. My father is German, and my mother is French.
Hmm.
And I got to be in this field. It was interesting for me because, my life was always very nice from outside. Everything went well. I grew up in a very healthy, wealthy family. I made a lot of trips when I was a child. So materialistic wise, nothing ever, I missed nothing.
Nothing lacking. Yeah.
No, nothing. But emotionally, there was nothing.
Oh.
So, and I never understood it because I have to say the German culture, and I know it's also from other countries, it's always like, as long as you have enough money, as long as you have a good car, why would you be unhappy?
Yeah. Materialism kind of maybe replaces emotional like stability or nurturing, because I think some people maybe don't have that tool set, or what I experience is like older generations, it's kind of like not you don't talk about things. You don't talk about those like things that are deep. And as long as you
Yes,
keep things on the surface level, it's okay. But there could be a lot of underlying things that are never talked about because it could be cultural, it could be,
yes,
ideological, it could be like social structure. And so, when people don't dive into the sociology or the psychology or the psychiatry of anything because it's like, whoa, we don't talk about those things.
exactly. Yeah, you always talk about the nice things that, yeah, all good, life is good, and nobody asks also. And then nowadays there comes a lot of depression. I just
Hmm.
read yesterday, in Germany, there are almost 10 million people with depression, like diagnosed depression, and not everybody is going to see a psychiatrist or
Yeah.
therapist. That doesn't. The
But
number of people who are in depression and are not talking about is high.
do you think that's because of what happened with the pandemic, or was that
Yes.
happening before the pandemic?
I think the pandemic was just bringing all of this really out because people
To the
couldn't.
surface.
Yes, because usually what you do is if you can't cope with the situation, you find a strategy to cope with it. So for some
Coping
people, it's I
strategy.
go out to see friends, I go out to do sports, but I go out, or things like this. So during the pandemic, no solution, and you were all with everybody, like even in a relationship, like on a family system, everybody was stuck together.
Yeah,
So
there's no real well, everybody looks for a little bit of a break. Like,
yeah,
if you go to work, you get a break because you're in the office. But then the office could have some toxicity, but at least you're in a different environment. Like you say, people go to the bar, they go out, they go to the golf course, they go here, they go,
Yes.
I'm a mountain biker, I go out in the woods. But like
Yeah.
inner work is a thing. Like if you aren't never been somebody that does inner work, like a lot of times artists, like we have our basically it's cathartic to be sit at the piano and actually put what's been going on in my life through into the piano. Like I can just
Yeah.
sit there and I can and if it finds an outlet. But if people don't know how to do that, or they've never been taught to do journaling, or taught to do painting, or taught to just like walk away and go into the woods or go for a walk, try to decompress, they don't know how it just builds up, right? And then they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. And then imagine you can't, cope with the situation, and you are still like with somebody at home. Like, okay, some of us were stuck alone. That was also not nice.
Mhm.
And you're like, some people can't be alone. A lot of people, unfortunately, can't be alone, because then, starting,
Too much
and
talk in the head.
yeah. And I think a lot of people struggled, but they had to survive in a way. So they were still in this mode of, okay, how do I do it? Then it was like a new situation. Then your system is like, okay, I have in a survival mode. And now after the pandemic is like, gone. Now comes, it's like when you go to have a holiday break, it's usually like you have a lot of stress, and then you go to holiday, and first day or second day you get sick.
Yeah.
It's when the body starts to relax and your mind relaxes, then the body knows, okay, now I can be like, have a pause. And then that's what I feel like is happening a lot. Like people now, they request again, like their relationships, their way of living. Do they need a lot? Do they not need a lot, like materialistic wise? So everybody's like asking himself or herself a lot of questions. So, and I think
Yeah.
it's good, actually. Yeah.
Well, it's good to have that kind of idea of the looking glass self, and then the inner self, and then have a place to actually. Oh, okay. We had a little bit of a glitch. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I
Okay.
have
But
to.
yeah, I was saying that sometimes people you need to find that way to talk. And like the one thing I found during the pandemic was podcasting. I'm
Yeah.
able to talk to people from around the world. And I started to really talk to a lot of therapists like yourself. I talked to people who were like people who were in the space of analyzing humanity, right? Going into like psychiatry or psychology or sociology, or talking about
Yes.
things that people don't like to talk about. And
Hmm.
what comes up a lot is like your topic of like narcissism and narcissistic abuse.
Yeah.
And like you said, a lot of people maybe kind of throw that word those terms around. And maybe you can like talk about like what you've done in your book to address like some specific you know issues.
Yes. Yes. So I discovered, I was exactly the same. Like during the pandemic, I found out a lot of things about my family system that has always been like very present, but it's like ignoring red flags in your family,
Yeah.
So I managed for 37 years to ignore them totally. That was like, very strong. And so I have to say like, so my book is about a girl, Emma. This is like the protagonist's name. And the book is 40 years. Like it's not, one chapter that goes like for 2 years or something. It's like a lot of chapters.
Oh wow.
And it explains to the reader how narcissistic abuse in a family system can appear. I have to
Mm,
say, there's always a pattern. You can like, and this pattern is like, sometimes I'm like, this is so stupid. This is so easy, you know. But in a way, it's very, in details, it's very individual. Every case is different.
yeah.
So explain in the book from this like birth of this girl how narcissistic abuse shows itself. And the good thing is that this protagonist has a narcissistic mother that is covered, and these narcissists usually put themselves in a victim role. And then she's so lucky to have also a sadistic narcissistic father. So this means this combination that is actually not very seldom is so toxic. So
toxic.
yeah, I bring the reader from birth to childhood, school, young age, like youngster, young adult, you know, and how does this how does this childhood impact you in your life when you're an adult? Because a lot of people, and I work a lot with victims from narcissistic abuse and also like people stuck in toxic relationships. And everybody from outside would say, like, why are you still with this man? Or why are you still, you know, in this family? And why are you depressed? But it's a very strong energy, and also it makes also changes in your nervous system and your body and even the brain. So yeah,
it seems like it's insidious because I've in what I've experienced, talking to people about codependency is sometimes like people feel safe in a codependency, right? Because it feels unsafe to get outside of it. And people would look at that and it's just counterintuitive. But like if
yes,
you're in something, it's like you're at a toxic workplace. You might
exactly,
stay
yes,
there because you don't know what it's like outside of that. And he's like,
yes,
you're dependent on the pay, you're dependent on the job. And even though it's toxic, it's what you know. And so you might
exactly,
stay within something that you know, and if people would say, "Well, that doesn't appear safe," but it might appear safe to you.
yes. Exactly, and that's a very good word, because narcissists, what they do is they take your trust and your safety feeling. And if you grow up with this, and then later you go into a relationship with a narcissist because this is what you know, it feels familiar, you prefer to stay there because then your inner child or one of your inner children will not will be like, it's more easy to stay there, exactly how you said, it's more safe than leaving, because then you really have the feeling of I'm gonna die.
Yeah, like a
And this,
wolf's at the door.
yeah, and that's very bad, and this is exactly what I work on with clients, and also what the book is about, because it shows like you can be like an adult and take responsibility to get out of a situation like this. But I also always have to say, the word victim is very good, well placed in this situation, because you are a victim of a narcissist. A narcissist is bad. It's a bad person, and they exactly know what they do.
Mhm.
So this is my
It's not
opinion.
unconscious. So it's not
Yeah.
unconscious because some
No.
people might like, "Oh, they're unconscious," right?
Yeah.
Because they might be in a parent role or in a
Exactly.
grandparent role, and then people say, "Well, they can't really mean to do that because that's grandpa, or that's
Yeah.
dad, or that's the mother."
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think they confuse the mothering role or the parenting role and think, well, there could be no wrong there. And
No.
some societies have a thing in terms of like your elder. There's
Yeah.
like a power structure. And so you're
Yeah.
not supposed to question
Yes.
what the elders tell you, or somebody's like your senior. Like a lot of time in the Asian culture, is like people who are your senior, you're supposed to give deference to them no matter whether or not they actually deserve deference.
Yeah.
Right? From actually your experience with them might say, well, you shouldn't give them any deference, but just because they're a senior to you, you give them deference. Well, that's probably not the right thing to
Exactly.
do.
No, exactly. But it's exactly what you say. Like, it's society. You have to respect the elder ones. And it's also like, I remember like when I got out of the toxic system, means like I broke the contact totally like 1.5 years ago. And I assure you, I thought I'm gonna die. In
Hmm.
my Everything in my body was like you don't survive this, because I was so codependent in this system. And this is also what it's abuse is never only bad. Abuse is good and bad. And this, like, you go through a down with your
Down
partner,
spiral. Yeah.
and then okay, it's very deep and very dark, and then you come out of it, but it's like a glue between
It
you.
keeps you it's the kinda like the passionate things that go on in a codependency
Yes, and
because
your nervous
you yeah,
system is also addicted to it. It's like a drug, because your nervous system needs the drama, the stress, because my cortisol levels, and I also know from a lot of other people, and it's statistically, like, it's sure, it's so high. I had to drink 3 cans of Red Bull when I came out of the system, because when there was no drama,
or
I
you're
was
missing it. Yeah, you didn't have enough
vicious. What is this? This is life, really?
without the drama. Yeah, people get
Yes,
addicted, like, artists sometimes get addicted to the crucible moments or the melancholy moments that drive the song. So if
yeah,
you're an artist and your biggest hits come from when you were melancholy,
right.
right? And then then you might keep on driving toward that because
Yeah,
when you're happy, the audience doesn't like your material. So
exactly.
then you end up putting yourself back into the chaotic, melancholy, dark moments to generate the work that your fans like. But that's not the right way to do it. You should learn how to do it from a creative sense that I could creatively put myself in that place, but I don't have to be in that place. And sometimes
Ex-
that's a hard balance.
I can understand. And also, it's like a way of your character. It's not easy to change this. It's always like you always have to have a high awareness, you as a creator, to be like, okay, up, down, but not too much up, not too much
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Because it's true, like, yeah, but this is also the beauty of it, because I feel like a lot of like creators bring a lot of feeling into the world.
Yeah. Well, because you can tap into it. Like the talent of a creator is they can tap into those things that I think everybody feels, and they give voice to it in a way that the people who when they present it to the world, people can say, "Wow, I really feel that."
Exactly. Yes.
They hear
And
it, they
yes,
sense it, and it's like so you found like a way to channel those things in a way that's, like, understandable or relatable to other
yes,
people, and some
yes,
people can't voice that, it takes a lot when they go to a therapist to actually open up that an
yeah,
artist can open up to the whole public with
yes,
with something that's really deep and
exactly.
painful, and then it's,
Yeah.
like, hard to do that in your life for some people can't easily do that.
But this is also the reason why I'm like quite having a lot of new clients now after publishing the book, because I work as a psychological advisor, but I know exactly the feeling also of narcissistic abuse, because it's very complicated. You can't really tell, people wouldn't understand if they have not um, gone through. They
Gone
would
through it,
say, "Oh, okay, mommy was mean. You have a little bit of yeah, discussions, or maybe even a fight, but no, it's not. It's like betrayal. It's bad. It's not nice. It's sadistic, So, and this level. So my experience is, and I've worked in a children's hospice for 10 years. So there was a grief counselor. So we had
yeah.
three grief counselors, and only one of them, also lost a child. So guess who wanted, whose families wanted always to go to see her, because they exactly knew she
They found
knows how to
yeah,
feel.
she understands it.
You know,
Well, it's the idea of having, I think you need to be able to be empathetic. And I think
yes,
a lot of times in society, I think people are a lot of times having a lot of issues with mental health because society has become less empathetic. It's become very, very black and white, like this and that. It's like
yes,
so people aren't willing to accept things, right, or understand things. they either right or wrong, and they don't understand the grays, and the people get in the camps, and it makes it hard when you have these situations where you need somebody to actually have some understanding or listening. And I think a
True.
lot of people don't listen. They kind of
Yeah.
talk at each other,
Yeah.
and they don't hear what somebody's saying. As soon as somebody says something, they might get triggered, and so they
Yeah.
don't hear anything else that other person said.
Exactly. And that what makes it so important to have a counselor or somebody like who's not in your friend or family zone to talk to, because how you said, people would always put their own thing above you. Like if you would ask me for an advice on a private level, I would always automatically, and that's normal, it's human, like put my own
Lens
pattern
on it.
over
Yeah.
you. But I'm never neutral. So it's very important to see somebody that is neutral. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the problem because people don't have that neutral party to talk to, and so they get, like, this advice that's going through somebody's personal lens with
Yes.
their own, preferences and prejudices, and everybody has their own opinion, and so,
Yeah.
like, if maybe you don't need to hear the opinion, you need to have somebody, like, hear you out, like,
Yes.
the whole thing, and
Yes.
then you can start to talk about it like in a therapist or psychologist, a psychiatrist. You're gonna do it because you've been trained or you have an understanding of how
Yes.
you should listen
Yes.
and how you should actually respond back after you listen.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to understand the kind of family dynamics, I think, though, because you have social dynamics. Because I was a sociology major in college, and we
Hmm.
kind of focused on microcosm, macrocosm.
Hmm.
So a microcosm is like in your family structure, like you're really close to your individual, right?
Hmm.
And then the macrocosm, you could be out in overall society. So
Yeah.
like with like in your corporate structure, the Democratic Party, Republican Party, like city structures, like bigger connections. So we would study like the sociology of a riot, the
Interesting.
sociology of somebody yelling fire in a movie theater. Right,
Hmm.
so you see the pattern, like people in groups, how they behave versus people in smaller social structures and how it kinda impacts, porously through either the macrocosm or the microcosm. They go both ways. So,
Hmm.
like, how you
Hmm.
were treated as a child by a narcissist affects how you act in overall society, so when you're in that group, you might get primed by certain things.
Yeah, totally. True. True. And there are a lot of narcissists in companies and
Yeah,
high,
toxic bosses, yeah, toxic workplace.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing I liked about the pandemic was, I'm a remote software guy, and I've been able to kinda stay remote, and it's my preference to be remote because I
Hmm.
found in my 20 years of working, there'd be all these really toxic situations in the office, and I worked for a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and they're very toxic behavior being done at all levels, whether it's the leaders or the people in the same level. And I found like when I was able to actually work remotely, it was more a meritocracy of what I could actually do versus all that. And I like, I'd rather just cut through things and get right to the point and just look at what I can do. And I don't want to have to deal with all the other stuff.
Very good. That sounds like you have very healthy boundaries.
I set the boundaries. I used to be a road warrior, and
Yeah.
now I'm at home. And like because it's like, why do I have to do that? I
Very
don't
good.
have to do that. You have to make a choice. Like, and some people don't know they can make a choice. So what about like permission structures?
I know.
Like
Yeah.
when you're dealing with like narcissist and you're a victim of a narcissist, do you have to like understand permission structures? Like what is their space for you? Like what are your boundaries?
You don't have any space with a narcissist. Like, I always use the wording walking on eggshells, because at a certain point, you are always trying to please the narcissist,
Hmm.
because either they are like malignant, or choleric, like people who would be like my father. Like one thing, you breathe different, you look not in the way he would like to, then he would like burst into shouting and screaming, and also like we have been all of us were like abused also physically. So you learn very, very, very early to please and to walk around. So like, bringing harmony. So that was my role in the family system. I have a twin brother. He would always drop the bombs. He would try to,
challenge.
yes, challenge it. So that was like for me the hardest. So I was always trying to bring harmony and everything. So he would come and drop the bomb, and I was like, so we had a lot. Yeah. But then you also have like this victimized narcissist, like a narcissist who is like, if you don't, they communicate in double binds. So double bind means they put you in challenges that you can't win. I give you an example. It's like a mom gives you two nice dresses, like a present, a gift, and next day the daughter wears one of them. And then the mom's response is, "Oh, you don't like the other dress." So where was ever the chance? And
Whatever one you're gonna have the same outcome either way.
exactly. And the funny thing about it is like the possibility that this girl should have said like, "I don't like both of them," is not even existent. So this is how I grew up.
Oh wow.
So
Double
it was
binds.
always to please the dad, to please the mom, to bring harmony. So I automatically went into relationships that were not about me, never also friendships. I was always trying to be like a savior.
People pleaser. So then it puts you in the role of being a people pleaser, which is in itself like
Big.
a problem. Could be a problem because then you could have like resentment because if you're
Yes,
a people pleaser, you're doing it and the person says, okay, they accept the things you're doing for them. And then eventually you might hit like a critical mass.
yes,
And then you're like, they might not realize, well, I thought you were doing that because you wanted to.
exactly. But it's not about this. Yeah, I was a big people pleaser. And also I have to say, like, people like me would always have like an inner bank account. Like, so I do 3 nice things for you tomorrow, and then I'm like equal with you.
Mhm.
And then you want to do something nice for me? No, I can't take it. People like this. Now it's totally different. Since I've gone through all this, I'm like a very different person, because what also victims of narcissistic abuse, all of them have guilt and shame feelings. So
Yeah.
since I lost these feelings, my life is so different.
Well, there's a lot of guilt and shame like structures within society. Some ideologies, practices, some just philosophies of some cultures like put you in that shame structure. Like so,
Yes,
like no matter what, like it's shame to do something that you might like as a human being, you probably would feel that, but then it make you feel shame for it. And
totally.
then it's like then you can't actually be who you want to be. And so
Yes,
you're pushing yourself down and eventually you might get to that critical mass
yeah,
and then you say, I need to talk to somebody. I need to get, you know, and then find out that you get the permission structure. Like you shouldn't have to have shame for feeling that because this is something that you can feel and it's okay. It's safe. And it
yes,
goes into that safety thing. Like people have all these things that make them feel the wolf's at the door,
yeah,
but there's no
yeah.
wolf at the door. But
No,
it feels like there's a wolf at the door because your mind puts you in that trap.
yes, your mind, and this is also the trauma. And it's sometimes even internalized trauma. That means like it's not even your own shame or guilt feeling. So in the case of the book, there's like, this is a trigger warning, like about this is about sexual abuse. And I'm coming from 2 generations from war. Like my father's dad, my grandfather was a Nazi,
Mm,
and my grandmother also got through a lot of not nice things in her life. So never ever they would talk about it.
mhm,
And this is where my researching skills of journalists came out, because I wanted to know something is wrong. So
Want to get the
sometimes
root cause.
also,
You wanted to
yeah,
get to the root cause of what it was.
yes, because this guilt and shame is coming also sometimes a lot from transgenerational trauma from the war generations, because
Mm,
what happened to women a lot, like not only in Germany or France, like everywhere in the world, like and now what is happening in Ukraine, and like
yeah,
this will cause so much trauma. So as a woman, I always felt this since I was a girl, because I had to be a good girl. This is also like a syndrome, a good girl, like
good girl syndrome or societal
yeah,
expectations of what is a good girl and what are
yeah,
you expected
exactly.
to
Yeah,
do as a good girl.
yes. So yeah, and this is also like a very interesting thing. And I grew up like with two brothers. So my brothers would always be more important because they were, yeah, boys.
Man, yeah.
So if my mom, and believe me, there was always enough food, but if she would have, made a certain kind of food and I was coming before my brother, she would say like, no, let's keep this for your brother. It's like
Hmm.
small
Yeah.
things. Or when I was 16, I had to press the underwear and the socks of my brothers. And I said, I
Oh,
don't want to do this.
yeah. Why would
So
you do
they were laughing, but in a way it was like, so I was never really going through a normal puberty, like rebellious or trying to use like, yeah. So this is what a lot of people also go through, because they are always in this, they have this certain role.
yeah, gender role.
Yes.
But there's a lot of problems with because this is the 21st century, and we're still living with sometimes like 19th century, 18th century,
Oh,
17th century structures.
yeah.
And you have some people with some political movements trying to bring people back to like the 1700s. Like
So
in the US today, we got people wanting to go and bring up things that were from like 1700s, like laws from the 1700s,
I
and
know
apply them to the 21st century. And it's
that.
like, would you do that to a man? Would you tell a man what
Yeah.
they can do with their body? You
Yes.
would
Oh,
jump up and down saying that's against your rights, but you don't have a problem when they do it to the other sex.
yeah.
And so there's somehow this like not an understand like we're human beings, but
Mm,
people are looking through this male female lens, and then the male is have at this higher end of the hierarchy from a
mm,
social structure, and it's like well, that's still prevalent,
mhm.
and it's hard to get across. So yet that's at like the macrocosm,
Yes.
and then you've got maybe a family history where the family structure is saying, well, we follow that, from the macrocosm. That's what we believe, that's what we think this family should do.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of stuck with that until you rebel against it or challenge it.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
That's a hard place to be. And like you said, a lot of women all over the planet are running into that.
Yeah.
So that's so when you deal with like when women come to you, um, like what are some of your like lessons learned that you can apply that you think are very helpful to people who maybe been suffering from that kind of scenario?
So the most important thing is to open up, to find somebody to speak to. Like I realized since I open up and talk about it, people would also come, because there's also a lot of shame in this kind of women don't because they always feel like, oh, I don't want to complain. Also this positive psychology, because we have a lot of like nice meditation teachers. It's nice to do meditation and everything, but abuse is abuse.
Yeah,
And we open up about it and not feel shame, and to find people around you, because what is also a bad thing about narcissistic abuse is that what they do is like they isolate you from friends, from
mhm,
family. So if it's somebody in a relationship um, that you have like it's not good for you, it's toxic, it's always important to open up to somebody. So, and to build a
yeah,
networking, like people
networking
around
with other.
us. Yes, yes.
Well, yeah, they could try to isolate you, right? Because isolation is kind of the control structure to keep
Yes,
you from in the cage. Because you're in this cage, you might not see a physical cage,
yes, Yes.
But like the isolation is like, well, you can't talk to this person, can't talk to that person, this person's banned, and then you're like, okay, but it seems like it's really insidious, like the way that happens, and then people feel like, okay, well, you were talking about like positive thinking, because sometimes you get these people say, well, you should only have like positive thoughts. Things can happen in life where you might think about the things that aren't as positive, right? And sometimes you have to look at like everything, because all emotions like are valid, and you shouldn't like invalidate
Yes.
feeling. Because if you
Yes.
invalidate feelings, you're like kind of locking it away, right? If you
Yes.
lock it away, that's not the right way to handle it.
No, no, that's true. And it's also like very important to have somebody tell you about your how you say how you about your awareness, because for me it was in the beginning. I went to my therapist and I told him like a normal story about my daily life with my family, and he would go like, uh-huh, and I was like, huh. So you have a very different view on things, because for me it was normal that my father would call me mean words.
Hmm.
And I never told this to anybody in my friendships, because a part of me knew it was not okay, but a part of me, for me, was normal. So I would think every dad talks like this to his
Yeah,
daughter.
yeah, because you wouldn't have perspective. Like if you don't have the perspective of
No.
ever really discussing that with your friends, you never got with your best friends or social group and actually, well, how does your father treat you? Like, what does
Yeah.
your father say to you? If you don't
Yes.
get into that kind of forum, and that's what you were talking about before about networking,
Yes.
right?
But then you
And
choose as a daughter, oh, he bought me this, or he was nice this. You don't tell the bad things.
yeah, you talk about the good things. Yeah, because that's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to talk about the bad things.
Yes, but so I didn't, and once I told like, okay, he was like bringing because weight also like control. Narcissists need control over their people. That means like not only mind but also body. That means like
Mhm.
when I was a little bit, have had a little bit more chubby, my father would like bring me the weighting thing and weigh me and say like,
Oh wow,
how many
sounds
kilos do you
kind of
have, like,
stress. Oh wow,
yeah. So
yeah,
that's what comes. Also a lot of eating disorders come with narcissistic abuse or abuse. So it's all about control. So if people listen today and they feel like they are too much controlled, it's important for them to go to see somebody to talk about it and to get their opinion neutral,
yeah,
because it can help you to see, because what you feel, bring it together with what is true, because there's a lot of gaslighting going on. Narcissists would always blame you, like it's
yeah.
so easy
They
for them.
reverse it, but a lot of times, what I've seen, and I don't know if maybe we can talk this. A narcissist will point out a flaw that they actually have,
Yeah.
and then put it on you, and say
Yes.
you're the one that's doing this, right? But they're the one that's doing that, but they've reversed it and they put it on you. And now they're saying that you're the one
Yes.
doing what they're doing. You can't even question, wait,
Yes.
isn't that what you do? It's like you can't even go there.
And this is exactly what they do. And the baddest thing is like society helps them in a way, and this is what makes it so cruel. Because, for example, when so this is the wording is smear campaign. Then happens like they put the blame on you as a victim, and then what happens is like when victims speak out and they talk about the abuse, the narcissist would bring this like turn it around. And then,
Hmm.
like, from the outside, what happened to me is like my own mother. When I talked about the abuse and I said, like, this is not fine, this is not good enough, I don't want to have this anymore, she would tell everybody, like, yeah, Marie is 37, she doesn't have children, and she's still not married. And
And
this
put
is what
it all on
society
you.
helps. Because society wise, everybody would say, like, oh yeah, so she's not good, she's depressed because of this, and now she's bad with her mom. You know what
No,
I
they're saying
mean?
it's your fault. I mean, it's like they basically victim blaming. They put the
Yes,
victim in the situation.
yes,
It's like people would say sexual assault is the fault of the person who was assaulted. The
yes.
people that were beat up, like, "Oh, you shouldn't have been on the street. You got robbed at midnight because you shouldn't have been on the street at midnight." Right? Or
A lot
somebody, you didn't
is
lock your doors, so somebody robbed your house, it's your fault. It's like, well, it's the person
yeah,
that robbed my house.
exactly. And this is what makes we have to change a lot in society, because like if women are still seen like they are mean because they have no child or are not married or are in the end
Yeah.
of 30s, this is bad. I mean, this is what you
Yeah,
were
well,
telling me before.
yeah. Well, we got that going on here in the US. We have people saying that women that don't have children are not
Mm,
valuable. That
really?
somehow, like, you could be a CEO, you could be an engineer, you could be an architect, you could be a musician, but if you don't have a child and it's not your child, like, you could adopt a child, but there's a mindset that if you adopt a child, it's not as you're not as it's not as good as actually having a child yourself. And it's this
Wow.
value being put upon from a mindset. And then that mindset is like that's archaic. It's an archaic mindset, and it's not
Yeah,
how you should value people. And
yeah,
there are people saying it was like, and that's their mindset, and that's from coming from the macrocosm,
yeah,
and then it can affect people at the microcosm. We're like, it's the whole idea is like at the individual level, that's affecting people because you're making like these great, these general statements, like
mm,
people who come from other places are dangerous.
yeah, yes,
Even though, like in my business in IT, a lot of the people that are in IT in our country are from other places, are from like immigrants.
mm,
But the
mm,
idea like all immigrants are dangerous and they're doing this. But what
mm,
about, there's tons of immigrants who are actually mathematicians, physicists, programmers, designers, and even if they're not, like they could be just doing work. They could
mm,
be your housekeeper, and you're saying that they're bad.
mm,
Your
mm.
housekeeper's taking care of your kid. And then
Yeah,
you're saying these people overall dangerous and bad. But it's like, okay. So it's like these grand statements are coming from like a narcissistic kind of mindset.
oh yeah, this is the double bind. Like you trust the children to this person, but at the same time you speak about this person as it would be like a criminal.
Yeah,
But it's easy, and this is what I said. Like I have to repeat this word. It's so stupid. They are so stupid. But it's society that needs to like change it, because there are a
you
lot
have
of
to
narcissists
challenge it. Well, yeah,
that you,
I think sometimes it's like a power thing. It's like
yeah,
it's like people are starting to feel, and like even our President Obama pointed out, it's like it's not like men have to stop feeling that just because you are abrasive and aggressive and mean doesn't mean you're strong.
no,
That those attributes of being a male are toxic, and
yeah,
you should not strive to, push people down makes you bigger. No, it's the people who build other people up. The people who
yes,
are, like, selfless and don't ask for anything, but do something because they think it's right, right?
yes, yes,
It's not
yeah,
that somebody trying to push somebody else down to get above them. That doesn't make you stronger,
mm, no, not at all.
and I think that's it's like a worldwide problem.
Yeah, yes,
But in terms of, like, strategies, so when you start to discover that you're in this kind of victimology of a
yes,
narcissist, what is the strategies of like advice to dealing with that family member? You've indicated sometimes you have to cut them off
yeah,
because
yes.
it's not going to work, and then other times you might be able to do other things. Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I tried to keep the contact with them, because for me, my family was everything. As I said, like I have a twin brother. I have an older brother who's only 1.5 years older. He was like my best friend. I was in contact with him like every day. So I really wanted to try to be in contact. But I started to be a little bit more distant to my mother, because I didn't want to call her 3 times per day anymore. I didn't want, to be involved in her private life. I said, like, okay, now I have to deal with my own things, because after COVID, my job's changed. I got through a crisis with my boyfriend during that time. I went from Germany to France because now I live in France. So a lot of things were going on in my life. And it was the first time in my life that I said, it's about me now. I can't help you. I can't deal with anything. I can't do anything more. And this was the start of the smear campaign. So my mom would tell a lot of lies to everybody. Like she would also tell people I would take heroin. I would be like, sexually manipulated by my boyfriend, like bad things. Nobody requested it. So in my case, I have to say the only way was to get out of contact.
Cut it. Yeah.
Yes, it was very easy because nobody contacted me anymore. Because if mommy is not fine with me, my brothers, like what I said, like they are not very strong men, they would go out of contact also. But they are also part of the system. So it's not that they are weak. It's like it's like in a hypnosis. So
Yeah, there's like in a cult. It's like you have to deprogram. Like if you
yes,
can't deprogram Jonestown, then Jonestown becomes Jonestown. Or
yes,
Heaven Gate becomes Heaven's Gate, Ruby Ridge. We've got lots of examples in the US of like cult,
yes.
bad situations. Like you got to deprogram somebody, and if you can't deprogram them, they might drink the Kool-Aid.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I have been like this also. I have to say, like, I was also like this. Like, every time when my brother tried to get out of the system, I would try to get him back to it because I was, in an egoistic way, motivated him to be in his role. Because when one leaves the system, the whole system needs to change,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's hard. But this was my way, and I have to say there are cases you have to go out of contact.
Mhm.
But sometimes it's also it depends on how deep this narcissistic
Yeah. What
patterns
the
are.
level
And
is.
there are parents who can apologize. It's possible, like, to be out of contact for a while and then get back together. It's also possible to do a therapy with
Like a
them.
group therapy, a family therapy. Like, yeah. So I guess if the narcissist goes into therapy
Yes,
and they get reprogrammed and the mindset is
yes,
changed, they understand, and they go
yes.
through that like a whole family healing
Yes,
like
I have to say, like,
process.
I don't believe or have never heard about a narcissist who got healed, but sometimes in the family system, you can, like, the enablers that are around, like siblings
Mm-hmm.
or the dad who is
They
not a
work.
narcissist, for example, to get back with him. And very important is to find a specialist, like a person, like even a therapist. Doesn't mean like if he's or she is a therapist that they know about narcissistic abuse, because I know from Germany, in university they talk about it like half an hour during the whole studies.
Well,
It's not. It's something that is found out. So read a lot of books,
mm-hmm.
find a specialist for it. There are a lot of good people, and what I also recommend is not to talk too much with people in your friend zone that have no idea about it, because this can traumatize you again. It's like
Yeah,
if
they
you
might
open
not, like you
about
said.
it, and
No,
then they would be like, yes,
well, the
so,
empathy level might not be there, and just because they're your friend, they're not
yes,
trained in it. Like, so if somebody's not trained, they don't know they're not trained. Like, they
yes,
don't know what they don't know. So
yes,
if you're searching for help and you need, like you said, it's important. And you brought up a point. It's like it seems like it's almost it's not the right strategy to think that you can fix the narcissist. It's more that you should try to like just work on yourself,
yes,
and then from there see where
yes,
things go, and then you have to decide how much you need
yeah,
to keep them in your ecosystem or not.
yeah. And what you also have to be is like very honest with yourself. Because believe me, I've been through like situations where I said like, oh, I also took on like some patterns, because if you grow up like this, you can
Yeah,
also like
repeat it.
very easily, you can do it, but you choose this path and then you forgive yourself for it. Don't be too strict with yourself. Like,
Hmm.
um,
Well,
to
you gotta have some grace for yourself because a
yes,
lot of times it's like the
yes,
bad self talk. A lot of people do that. And it's like, you got to kind of, it always seems like, oh, that's like everybody knows that everything starts with like loving yourself
yes,
because like what's, oh, well, that's like everybody says that. Well, because it's true.
yeah.
It seems like, well, that's simple. It's like, it's not so simple if you can't do it.
Oh,
Right.
it's so simple, but yeah, it's not easy.
It's not
That
easy. It's like sometimes there's things that are like, oh, that's what you've mentioned before. Like there's things that wasn't so stupid because some things are kind of basic, but it's very hard. They're very hard to do.
oh
Um,
yeah,
and
yes,
people might just think this because it's a simple term or a simple concept. The
yeah,
execution of it is not so simple.
no, no, absolutely not.
But
Yeah,
I want to relay like if in that URL we have on below, where it
yeah,
says subscribe page and the
yes.
workbook, first steps in the healing path. What happens when people click on that?
So they get on a landing page, and they get free freebie from me,
Mhm.
like a lot of pages with some pages or instructions to go through the idea, because it's most of the times it's people who come to me like, I don't know if I'm with a narcissist, I don't know if my
Mhm.
system is toxic, so they are not sure. So this is like, a path that I'm guiding through, where they can do some things to get to understand if they are maybe or not.
Like an assessment. So that's cool.
Exactly. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
Well,
cool. It's a lot of work also with the body, and yes.
I want to let people know that that is fully clickable in the podcast description. We were just live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So if you go into the podcast description on those channels, that hyperlink is there and it's clickable. And we will be on all the podcast platforms that you listen to or watch later today, and it will be clickable there as well. I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast. I do appreciate a lot of the topics we've talked about today. I think they're very useful to the public that listens, and this is why we bring people like yourself to the public through our podcast. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.